Hey YouTube, just a quick life update before we get into everything. My wife, Sarah, has now had 2 scans post chemotherapy and everything is stable. She's still in remission. It's awesome news all around. Thank you all, as always, for such great support. Really appreciate it. These kinds of just surveillance scans that they call them are going to continue about every 3 months or so, and I'll continue to keep you guys in the loop as we progress. Just some background. So I've been following Rick's work for a long time. I don't know if it's been 2 decades, but definitely for longer than a decade. And while he hasn't paid me to review this copy of the book, he did provide it to me again free of charge. I was under no obligation to review it, but I still went ahead and added the paid promotion tag to this video, just to be as transparent as possible. So I'll still do my best to be objective, but again, know that I've been a fan of Rick's work. I like his style. I gladly would have paid for this book out of pocket, and I really can't think of a scenario where I would have been upset with what he's produced. Diving right in with most of these books, and this one's no exception. It opens up usually with a bit of a background, a biography, a little bit about the author, and who they are and why this book is an interesting, relevant perspective. And so Rick gives us a bit of his kind of lifelong hobby history, and as he's described it in the book, a lot of it really kind of mirrors my own childhood and growing up, and I imagine it kind of mirrors a lot of other people as well that share this hobby. But what stands out to me the most, I think, is Rick's been able to work with these skills professionally. He's done a lot of scratch building and fabricating things for the commercial market, different big displays. So I thought it was really interesting to learn that aspect of his background, in addition to parts that I'm more familiar with. For example, I know that he used to run the U.S. distribution for Meg Productions. So when it comes to hobby books in general, or at least books that I think myself and many others will purchase specifically for this hobby, I think there's probably a couple different categories. With this book, specifically, I think there's a lot of unique things that really make this volume stand out in any hobbyist collection. But again, what are those categories? I would tend to think there's how-to guides, there's just research and references, and you can really kind of dive in and get more and more specific with these categories as you go. It really depends on what you want to accomplish. Is it a how-to guide for modeling in general that's kind of aimed at beginners, which might touch on a little bit of everything, or it could be a really specific how-to guide that's maybe a little more advanced and deals with just one piece of equipment or one specific part of the hobby, like figure painting. And then when it comes to references, maybe more historical books, some of them might just be text-based, just very specific histories of military actions or units, or photo albums where they have lots of original photographs from the time period. And many of these books might have originally been written without scale modeling in mind whatsoever. So instead of guiding us like a how-to manual, these books kind of guide us with inspiration and can add some history and context and a bit of that realism if we're looking to add that into our hobby, and maybe provide a little bit of story or specific people and events. And while the internet has largely stepped in today to provide much of this kind of context and historical reference, at the end of the day, I think people like myself find that nothing really beats a hard copy. Again, with this book, With or Without by Rick Lawler, I think it's pretty unique. It's not exactly a how-to guide. It does have plenty of how-to step-by-step instructions, but it's not exactly a reference for any one specific vehicle. It's not necessarily aimed at beginners, although I think it would really benefit beginners. But it's one of these kind of all-encompassing books dealing more with, I think, some modeling philosophy. The closest thing that I own and that I've read through and that I could compare this to would be the Tank Art series by Michael Rinaldi. While I do think that the Tank Art books definitely fall into the traditional category of kind of how-to step-by-step guides, they also offer a lot more in terms of the thought process and the philosophy that Michael Rinaldi has in terms of his modeling style and why he does the things he does. And that's really what makes this book by Rick Lawler unique, is Rick dives in headfirst to talk about some of these more philosophical aspects of the hobby that we all experience. And this might be something that a lot of us already spend a lot of time thinking about, or maybe we don't. But either way, it's not something that I think usually gets published. You might see a little bit of this kind of stuff referenced maybe at the start of a larger article or at the start of a book, but it's not something that I think has had its own book kind of just dedicated to it, which again I think makes this book with or without really unique. So what specifically about this kind of philosophy is this book covering? And again, that's kind of what the title would suggest, with or without. It's kind of like a book about what I would describe as decision points and their consequences or the outcomes of these decisions that we make. And again, these are the kinds of decisions that I think we all make with kind of every project we start. And it's, again, depending on who you are as a modeler, you might spend a lot of time trying to answer these questions for yourself, or you might have already just kind of developed your own sense of style and the way you do things in your routine, and all these questions might automatically be answered. Things like, should I build this kit straight out of the box, or should I use aftermarket parts? Should I dust off my airbrush? Do I even own an airbrush? Do I want to purchase an airbrush, or should I just, keep using a brush? What kind of a paint scheme should I go with? And should I add figures, a display base? What am I trying to accomplish here? Am I trying to tell a story? Do I really just like this kit because of the specific piece of equipment? It's something that we all do. And so what's nice about this book is it kind of gives you some of that insight into how Rick approaches these questions. But it doesn't just give you these decision points that he makes along the way, which is probably what you might even see if this topic is covered in like a magazine article or another book. The author might explain why he made certain decisions. But what's, again, unique about this book is Rick has shown you kind of the outcome of both decisions, right? Do you want a super detailed kit? Do you want to build it right out of the box? Rick does both. Okay, so you don't want to dust off the airbrush. Maybe you don't own one. Can I paint a hard edge camo scheme with a brush? Can I paint a soft edge camo scheme with a brush? Again, Rick does both. And again, like, what kind of story are you trying to tell? Do you want to tell a specific story with a specific camouflage pattern or unit marking, or winter whitewash, or do you want to tell a story of a vehicle that's rushed into service that hasn't been painted yet, that's still at the factory? And so Rick approaches that again, building the same vehicle twice, painting one up with camouflage, painting the other one up in factory primer. And then the final chapter of the book is what if you just don't have any limitations at all? What if you really want to dive in and give a project everything you have? What if you want to add figures? What if you want to make a display base, make a diorama? Add in all those aftermarket parts, really try and tell a specific story. So again, I think it's, I don't know, that's really the only way I can describe it. It's just a unique look, at how we hobby and how we make these decisions throughout the process. And this is a professional published modeler's perspective, and the choices that he makes. He shows you how to make great results with either choice. It's not, hey, you have to do it this way and you can't do it that way. It's, hey, here's an example of great ways to do either decision. So I think for me, what's really been good about this book is it's really caused me to slow down and think about these decisions and try to think about what it is I'm trying to accomplish. We might be so influenced with magazine articles or forums or other YouTubers or social media in general, maybe companies advertising, all this kind of stuff. And it's sometimes it's just kind of second nature to buy a kit and then to read a few reviews and then buy some aftermarket, and then it just kind of spirals and we wind up collecting a lot of stuff, or at least that's been my experience. And so I think kind of asking ourselves, what it is that got us into this hobby, or what is it that we want to accomplish with this hobby. Do we like to model for like a rivet counter's level of accuracy? I mean, is the vehicle itself all that we care about? We just really like the engineering of it, or the shape. Maybe it offers some really good opportunities with the angles and the panels to really paint something interesting. Or are we more interested in the historical context? Do we want to add some of that story to it with specific figures or a specific camouflage or markings? And then again, like what is it we're trying to produce something for? Are we trying to win a contest? Are we trying to submit something to a local museum? Or are we professionals and this is going to be used in a film production? I mean, like what is it that we're trying to achieve in terms of our quality here? Are we just trying to, maybe be as accurate and polished as possible while still producing things relatively fast? Because at the end of the day, I think we can spend years working on one project, or we can spend a weekend slapping something together, getting some paint on it, and calling it finished. And I think there's probably a happy medium somewhere in between. But ultimately, I think it's worth asking those questions before we even start. Okay, what is it that I'm trying to achieve, and how much effort and products and money and time should I put into this? I think I've found that I'm okay with just getting kind of the general idea across. I don't need rivet counting accuracy. I don't even need a whole lot of historical accuracy sometimes. If it just looks cool and I'm happy with the actual artistic quality of it, I think that's usually good enough for me. So I like getting past the build to be able to paint. I like kind of the overall aesthetics of certain paint schemes and different camouflage patterns and weathering effects, and I like the sense of story that we can emphasize by adding snow or thick mud, or even adding like destroyed brickwork and building rubble on the back of the engine deck or something. So even having never really been a rivet counter, I still find myself kind of influenced by decades of all these well-detailed models that you see on the internet, on forums and magazines, and I still wind up with a fair amount of like aftermarket photo etch and resin detail sets, and but the artistic outcome of the work, I think, drives a lot of the decisions that I make now going forward. So what Rick's been able to kind of show me with this book is that some of these great outcomes that we're after, they're possible regardless of kind of these early decisions that we make. And you can add a couple simple details to something to really elevate it and kind of bring it beyond that in-box quality without having to spend a whole bunch on a massive photo etch set and spend so much time soldering and fine detailing. So after reading this book, I've kind of found that I'm really all over the place, or at least I have been all over the place in terms of my own decision-making process. My stash of plastic and aftermarket is usually growing more than it's shrinking. And I think going forward, I'd like to be more cognizant of these decisions in terms of, again, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? Am I looking to just build something for like an aesthetic, artistic, historic, storytelling kind of approach? And if so, I probably don't need this $15 or $20 or more set of, whatever highly detailed photo etch part. And then just in general, keeping that end state in mind, I think throughout the building process can help when it comes to thinking about what it is you're trying to do. If you know you're going to be building a diorama that's going to show a vehicle in a certain way, maybe you don't even need to worry so much about a little mistake you made on one side. You can always throw some stowage on top of it, or some building rubble, or some mud or snow or something, right? So you don't necessarily have to spend so much time fixing little mistakes along the way. If you have that goal in mind, or that desired end state, then maybe there's some chances to kind of cut corners. And so thinking about what's going to contribute in a positive way to that desired end state, I think will hopefully help focus me a little bit more and allow me to build through more of my stash, kind of complete more projects in a way that makes sense. Anyway, I did just want to finally put this video together. It's been such a long time in the works. I mean, how long, you ask? Well, realized that I got this book, first edition, signed by Rick Lawler himself, well before they ever hit any major U.S. retailers. It's been over a year at this point. So luckily for you guys, of course, this is no longer something that's hard to come by, and it's absolutely in stores. It's readily available. I'll provide you guys with an unaffiliated link to one of my all-time favorite online retailers, so you can find a copy for yourself. At least if you're in the U.S., of course. Of course, you can no doubt order this direct from 502 Abteilung or probably AK's website. I believe both of those are based out of Europe. But again, if you're in the U.S., I'll send you guys a link to my favorite distributor where they've got this in stock right now. But if it doesn't really sound like something that you'd be interested in, or if your hobby bookshelf is getting a little too crowded and you have a lot of specific reference materials or how-to guides already, and maybe a stack of model magazines, you already kind of know how your decision-making process works, and you're pretty comfortable with all of the way you're approaching things, and it makes sense for you, then there's always other ways that you can check out this kind of stuff. If you don't want to go after the book itself. I mean, Rick has his own YouTube channel now. Really shows you the process behind the scenes and gives you some insight in his decision making. And he offers a Patreon membership where he goes into even more detail about his projects and these decision points, and you can watch it happen live. And he'll even kind of offer some of the members the opportunity to weigh in and give feedback along the way, or ask questions kind of in like a poll format of, should I do this or that, where it's almost like you're kind of living this with or without book in real time. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody, stay safe and enjoy the hobby.